Hey, hello everybody. I'm here this afternoon with Dave and Andrea. Hi Dave, hi Andrea.
Hello, Karen, and all of those listening. Nice to see
Yes,
you.
it's been a little while. You're house sitting at the
Okay.
moment, aren't you?
Yep. We're just doing our thing, just trying to stay ahead of the curve, as they say, and keep warm. It's a pretty cold winter.
Why is that? Have
Um,
they not got heating there?
we're, we're house sitting for some people that are quite minted. Actually, they've got like a fancy Porsche and a Range Rover in the garage and whatnot, but their heating system is woefully inadequate, and they're all modern house, all like eco and whatnot, and it's kind of completely sealed with its own ventilation system, but it's all remotely controlled by this guy's phone from, well, he's in New Zealand at the moment. And he's got no fireplace. Or they've got a fake fire, holographic fire, but we can't burn a fire.
Can we just stop a moment, and it is really funny.
It's
We're
ironic.
cold, but
Yeah.
they've got a hologram as
For
a
a
fire
fire.
that has no heat that
Yeah.
comes from it. Now that
Yeah.
is very
Yeah. That's so modern.
that's very 2023, or that's
Eh?
very kind of
Yeah.
That's
like
it, holograms. All holograms now. Well, we're not,
Yeah,
but
and
everything's turning
you
into
want to hear
holograms.
this for an irony? At the beginning of this year, we were off grid in near Cape Town, living in a forest in a tiny teepee. But right outside of that teepee, I had a wood fire, and I had an unlimited amount of wood. I could burn a fire all day long if I wanted to. There was a boiler that I could run up and make a really hot bath, and we could lie in a bath for hours and hours and hours if we
Yeah, I
wanted to.
remember you. I was thinking, guys outside in a bath.
Yeah. Outdoor bath, and so because we were on a river, there was unlimited water. In a forest, unlimited fuel. And so we had very
And
little there, but
warmer.
at least
It
we
was
could
warmer
keep
there,
ourselves
wasn't it?
warm
Warmer.
and have hot baths. Well, yeah, it was summer to be fair.
But there's some symbolism in it, art symbolism. There's some truth in that, because actually this is what I think we're walking through at the moment, and that is about taking our power back, and ironically, fuel or heating being power, but that we're supposed to be autonomous. We're supposed to be responsible for ourselves, and that those are the two sides of the coin. We were back in nature, living a simple life. We could control or have some control over our surroundings and our environment. Whereas here, in this particular house that we're in, it's all on the grid. It's all controlled, computerized technology, and there's no control, and you're really reliant on some outside source.
Smart, they call it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we have no control over whatsoever. So it's an interesting observation and lesson, and the fireplace is obviously very symbolic of being hologram.
That's just weird,
It's all an
Andrea.
illusion, yeah.
Yeah, it's all an illusion.
It's all an illusion, this whole thing. And I mean, why people are fearing, they push the energy prices up, the cost of fuel and whatnot, and everything else is going through the roof price-wise. And that's all being done on the basis of this delusion of shortage of oil, gas, war, and we know that this is humanity being played into a corner where we're once again, facing down, more restriction, more limitation, and it's kind of, it's easy to make light of it, but I know that there's old people, sitting in cold homes at the moment, not being able to afford or not wanting to.
They're frightened to
run
put
up,
it on.
run
I
up
mean,
their heating.
I told you just before we were talking about my ex-in-laws, but they were telling me, well, we can't really have the heating on that much, and they've got money because they're worried about having hundreds of pounds worth of bill.
Yeah. Well, one of the places we house sat, they said our previous energy bill was 3,000 a year, and it's gone up to 8,000 for the next year. So it's and it's all being done to control people and to really ram home this, what they call climate change or global warming. I'm not sure what the current
Global
buzzword
means
is for it.
money. It's all about money. The globe means money.
Control through, but it uses the lack of, because people, even this guy, as I say, he's got some fancy cars, he's got a bit of money, but even he's worried about, you know, what his energy bill will be, and it's like, how can that be right? But it's
Yeah, my
because,
son was telling me his friend was £26 a day on electricity. Sam says his was about £2
wow,
something, but the other guy was
wow,
£26 a day. How much would
wow,
that be?
wow, wow. Well, yeah, but I mean, he's probably running a greenhouse up in his loft. You know, he's got like,
Wow. Oh yeah, and ask that one.
you know, but so there'll be a payout at the end every 8 weeks or whatever, 10 weeks it takes to turn them around. But you know, yeah, no, but it's part of the illusion. See, because what they're doing is they're creating. Yes, it's about the money that's being ripped out of people's pockets. But when they do, you know, we were talking before you started the call about the Oxford program, where they're zoning the city up and they're going to start limiting how people can move and so on. In order to pull off the 2020 Corona thing, they had to, for years and years and years before that, they had to have the Zika virus. They had to have other ones, pig flu and those, you know, they had to have all of these other things, and even all the adverts that you see for germs, you know, like they had to get in people's minds that there was this invisible threat all around you. And then
Well, there was a program when I was younger. I don't think you were here for that, but it was actually a virus had killed everybody, and we were watching like it was on every week. I forget what it was called now, and
right.
Obviously they were travelling around, and obviously people were dying everywhere.
Yeah, I might know of that one. But the thing with this energy crisis is that, you know, they're really ramping it up in terms of it's all to do with climate change, and so you've got all these youngsters and those that want to do, you know, virtual signal, that they're gonna be more than happy when good Uncle Government comes rolling in with the next round of restrictions and says, this time we're restricting you because climate change, and you're going to have to walk everywhere on your knees now, or by bicycle or whatever, because blah blah blah. And people will buy it because for years they've been indoctrinated and really felt the pinch on, yes, you know, look at what we're doing. We're using too much fossil fuel. Perhaps Bill Gates is right, you know, they should be reducing the population by 15%, etc., etc. So, you know, that's why, and they like to get people's attention. They like to hit you where it hurts, and certainly when it comes to you know, your finances and freezing, it really does hurt. So, you know, that's, and I think the one of the it's a double-edged sword knowing what we know, because you can be lost in the, oh my gosh, I can see what they're doing. But on the other hand, you can go, well, okay, I see what they're doing, but let me not kind of get caught up in the swell of it, or washed away in the tsunami of horse poop. I've got to do what is right for me, and this is the journey that Andrea and I are trying to be on, which is, you know, let's not be so anguished by all of the stuff that's coming, because it doesn't seem to, you know, I mean,
Somehow you've got to go with the flow a little bit, haven't you?
Well, that's right, because I know you kindly posted that video of me in Oxford back in 2018, you know, really giving it to the crowd there.
Yeah,
you
were, weren't you? You were really on one.
I was on one, but I'd been stoked by two guys had been heckling me for a little while, for about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and then I just like erupted into this explosive like delivery, unscripted, just here it is. And you know, and I've put an awful lot over the years. A lot of it hasn't been on camera, of course. I put an awful lot into trying to do my bit to wake people up. And you know, the truth is that there are, as you know, with all of these things, there are far more people who are going to buy into the next program. I know people say, oh, you know, the COVID thing, it's going to have woken so many people up and so on. I'm like, nah, you know, when I go around to these few house sits that I've done and get
They've got something else there now, wars and things and prices on, you know, like Christian was telling me that someone couldn't remember the cow one. That wasn't that long ago. They can't remember these things, and that's how they get away with bringing the new things in, because we've kind of forgotten. There's been so many, you know, like, I think what it is they made the horror movies so bad that you're almost immune when you're watching the television, because it's not as bad as watching a horror movie, but they've got you now with fear. And then, I don't know, people just, what?
Well, I was out of the country when they switched from COVID to Ukraine, but friends were saying in 2 days, the media forgot completely about COVID, and it was all just about the Ukraine-Russia thing. And so everybody, all of a sudden, not everybody, but so many people started hanging blue and yellow flags and started opening their doors to Ukrainians and just believing the next story and taking that on as, wow, this is it. I'm even willing to suggest that you don't know if you know, the World Cup has been ongoing. I think today is the last day of the World Cup, right? And back 8 years ago, when is it Dubai or wherever it is, it's in the Middle East somewhere. When Dubai was awarded the World Cup, I was still kind of in the major. I was still watching TV 8 years ago, and I was aware that what had happened was, for the first time, they'd awarded the World Cup to a country like in a desert, where normally the World Cup would be conducted in the summertime. But that would be impossible because it was so hot in the desert in the summertime. So they delayed the World Cup until now, December, and which is very unusual. But I think they knew all the way back then that they would still be kind of getting over the COVID hoax so that they wouldn't be able to conduct the World Cup as normal, which is why they delayed it until December. So, you know, these things have been planned for a very long time. And so the plan to take people, and we know, like with Al Gore coming out after he lost the presidency against Bush Jr., he came out with the Inconvenient Truth, you know, and that big global warming thing. And, you know, that program that has been running to get people to believe that we are destroying the so-called planet has been ongoing for a very long time. And so I guess my point is that I don't see us, as much as we really want to wake people up, I don't see us stopping the train. You know, people went on a COVID tour around this country trying to wake people up, but I swear you could walk into any town and you'd still find many people who, even if they're not wearing the nappy on their face now, they would still think that it was the right thing, and that, you know, so I feel like there's more of this kind of illusion coming down the line, and we have to be okay with that, and realize that it's going to unfold. So where are we going to place ourselves? Are we going to be the ranting guy like I was in 2018 going, wake the hell up? Or are we going to be doing the work on ourselves? Because truly, the only thing that we have here to control is ourselves. You know, we are meant to be our own masters.
I was talking to Claudio earlier on. He says it's a spiritual war, so it is all about you, whether you believe. And if you don't believe and you've got love and stuff like that, then this stuff won't affect you.
Well, before you started this call, you were talking about how Protestantism and Catholicism are actually just two sides of the same coin. And I agree with you on that. And I think that this is where I learned that, well, I'm just being a Protestant about, you know, face nappies and jabbing. I'm just being a Protestant, and the people who are going along with it are being the Catholics in that example, and I'm being the Protestant in that example. But we're still squabbling over the same entity. One's saying it's right and I'm saying it's wrong, and I'm like, well, maybe I should just be stepping away from the whole thing. It's like you go down to Speaker's Corner and argue religion with people. It's like, you know, you could lose your whole life on trying to defend your.
You can't change anybody's mind. You can't they wake up because they wake up, but usually there's somebody that touches something and it makes them think. And for me, you know, about flat Earth, it came up. It was actually on YouTube. You know, that HOAX word down there, and I thought, no, I can't, because I just done, you know, that day of 9/11. And I just thought, I can't. And about a month later, I looked at it and thought, oh my God. But it took me a month. So you could be the catalyst for people. But you can't, you know, they have to wake up themselves a bit, don't they, and realise something's not right.
Yeah, water being level should be a catalyst to
That was
people
what it was
to
for me.
below.
Water seeks its
But-
level. And all
Yeah,
I could think about was all the ocean.
but you know, people will still find ways to excuse that, and so. But Andrea wants to intercede here with some.
I just want to give a perspective on where my journey and my training and my own healing is kind of going, how I understand it, and where I can bring compassion to others, and really just hold my hand out as to hold someone's hand rather than need to shake them and wake them. So two things. One about the Protestant. So the Protestant, or there's another way of putting it, is there's those that conform or comply or submit, and then there's those that resist or protest or and they're an oscillation. They're a swinging oscillation of survival. So let's just go back to trauma that happens in everybody's childhood, as far as I'm concerned, because we're far enough generationally ahead where our parenting, unfortunately or fortunately, or even
Well, they didn't talk about all these things, did they?
Sorry,
they didn't talk about all these things. They didn't.
but it's more,
They didn't question anything.
It's more from the point of view of having your needs met,
Yeah.
spiritually, physically, and emotionally, and it can be very subtle. So I'm not talking about trauma that has to be something
Physical damage
or something major. It can be, I'm not heard. It could be the way that you're sleep training your child.
I think a lot of people don't feel understood, do they?
No. And so I believe that everybody in the spectrum has some sort of trauma from their childhood, and we know from 0 to 7, it normally happens in the 0 to 7 period.
That's because children believe everything is real up until about then.
Well, no, they will also make decisions about themselves and never blame the parent when because that's their normal.
And then they carry it around with them the rest of their life. And they treat themselves like they hate the way they treat themselves, but they still treat themselves like this awkward parent that doesn't help them, and they still treat themselves like that. You've got these parental tapes going around your head.
So it's where you see life from. So it becomes your lens, and you have certain survival mechanisms because, as a child, if you do not get your needs met, if you were in the wild, then you would die. You would be kicked out of the pack and you would die. And we're no different. We want to be part of a unit. We want to be loved. We want to be taken care of. We want to be safe. And safe is a very important thing. If your needs are not met, you will feel unsafe as a child, and you will do things, which is why you find people who control and manipulate, because it's a survival mechanism. It's a survival or obedient or comply is very much part of that. And so when I say survival, I mean we're all put into some form of survival. And the oscillation of either I submit or comply, or I'm obedient, or I'm going to resist and I'm going to push back. You see this in relationships. Some people are people who hang on close and tight to people, other people push people away. It's the same thing. It's submission or resistance. And so when you see people in resistance say, I'm a truther and I hate, I'm going to push back against the government, that you're still in survival. You aren't actually free, because really what we want is freedom. What we want is to be free, to be who we always were, and that is a divine being that is having a human experience. So it doesn't mean you're not going to have good and bad moments and experiences. It just means that you are able to navigate them and have your feelings in the purest form, which is really what being alive is. But we're in a situation now where those traumas are being manipulated by the controllers, and so they know that either we're going to submit or we're going to resist. And unfortunately, a lot of the truth community, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, and I am there. I'm in that journey. I am still walking my way to freedom, And when I say freedom, I don't mean external freedom, although you detach from the external controls and become an observer and neutral and live your life with freedom when you're no longer oscillating between
In yourself.
either submitting, or, well, there's being yourself, but there's so many layers to that.
Yeah, and what is yourself, really?
The programming.
If I hurt you, like Andrea was saying, if I hurt you at 1 or 2 years old, yourself has already been steered off course from a time before you can even remember. So it's hard to know that, but obviously this is the journey that we're on. It's almost like we've been thrown into a storm, and it's like designed like that. I'm not wanting to point any fingers and say mommy, daddy bad or government bad.
It's not about blame. It's not your fault. But it's now your responsibility.
Yeah, because we're adults now. We've got to take care of ourselves. We're not children anymore. Well, we're big children.
If you're blaming, then you're still the victim. And if you're the victim,
you've got problems still about it. Yeah,
you cannot heal fully. You cannot come to completion and be in wholeness. And being in wholeness is being divine. We were born here whole, and it's only trauma and what our mind tells us to be true.
Do you know what some of it's about, though? Some of it, I've got this book up here. It's called I'm Okay, You're Okay. And that's where we should be. But when we're born, for instance, you don't feel very good, but you feel the adult that's looking after you is okay and you're not okay. And then it can go, you're a child, a little child, and maybe another baby's coming and you're falling over, and now you don't feel okay and the person who's looking after you isn't okay. And then he gets to another stage where you're going, I'm okay, but you're not okay. When really it should be I'm okay and you're okay. That's peace. The others aren't.
I think the problem we have is that our parents weren't okay. And this is not about blame. It's not saying you're bad parents, because we've all done it. I sit here with my hands held high saying, I parented from my wounds. And
our parents parented from their wounds, and we know that the system has been, creating this challenging, divisive, broken system. I mean, some people even think, we've only come here a few hundred years ago, and how we came here itself is in question. So we're fairly sure of that. Can I just offer something as well? Is that I talk to people in terms of the maze, the difference between a maze and a labyrinth. The difference between a maze and a labyrinth is a maze goes off in all these different directions and has many exits, whereas a labyrinth follows a path and always ends up in the center. There's only one way in and one way out. And when we're in the truth community, even outside of the truth community, people are amazed, and they're all off in all these different directions, whether it be the football or whether it be the next truth but big bombshell. And there's all mazes rabbit holes that you can get lost in. And when in fact it should be this kind of labyrinth that heads towards you, of course, is the heart. And so we're either held up too much in our head or too much in our lower chakras, in our lower energy centers through trauma, or we're super spiritual. But actually we're meant to be heading back in towards the heart, finding love, and it won't matter when you find heart, earth, balance, neutrality. It won't matter at all.
You won't, if you're not right in your mind and that, you won't even see it if it knocked on your door.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to go back to the trauma. If it's 0 to 7, you speak to most people, and most of it actually happens 0 to 3. Most people haven't got memory of it. So most of this programming is blind. We're blindly walking around with it. People just go, that's just who I am, or don't even know it's operating on default.
Yeah, you know how you're going to treat the world by the age of 3.
Yes, so I think this is where I come back to what Dave was saying about going back to the heart. Once you can go back to the heart and you've healed, because most people are just heartbroken, actually, because our first intimate relationship is with our mother.
We've been abandoned somewhere along the line. That's what's happened. We've been abandoned.
Rejected. And again, I have to preface this with this is not about blaming. This is about seeing what it is and then taking responsibility for it. And of course, we can talk more about how you do that, but that's not really relevant. the point is, once you come to completion with all of that, and actually you can forgive and let go the attachment to the past, so that you no longer have to live from the past, then actually
You need to stop punishing yourself.
Well, and others, and you'll then have compassion for those people who are still asleep.
Yeah, Andrea, I so understand that. My dad has never overly been that nice because he doesn't realise that he's punishing everybody all the time. That's what he does. Yeah.
Well, because it's a survival mechanism that he learned, and being right. By the way, when we think we're right, that's also a survival mechanism. So it's a protection, because underneath not being right is very vulnerable for most people. And I can say that because I'm one of those. I need to be right, because then if I'm right, I'm not vulnerable. And vulnerability is a very difficult thing for us to feel.
Oh, Andrea, I love you.
Especially if, as a child, you
felt... I love you, Andrea, because
Thank you. I love you too. But as a child, if you felt unsafe, then, feeling vulnerable, you would have learned survival mechanisms to make yourself feel safe, whether that be that you controlled or you were,
I think children handle it better than the adults, to be honest. And then when you grow up and then you've got to face all that, I think it's even worse for the adult, because the children handled it. And as an adult, you've got the child and all of it not sorted. It becomes too much for people. They get really upset, and that's what
I think
to
it's
me.
also when you've lived with it for a very long time, then there's still that wounded child in you, and so you're an adult with a wounded child in you, and
you have to sort yourself out. That's why I was 28 when it happened for me, and that's when I wrote this poem, Why Be Afraid of Your Emotional Dealings. I wrote this poem, it's about the size of an A4, and I knew then, end of a marriage, pain usually causes it. But I needed to know who I was, because I didn't. I was young when I had children, so you go from being a kid to having your own kids, and you haven't got to know who you are as a person, and it happens when you've got children, or you're married to the wrong person, etc., etc. And so I worked all that out in my late 20s.
But interesting enough, 28 is your Saturn return, so you were right on target. And again, 56. The next one is 56, and the next one, if you're.
But that doesn't mean it's easy, does it? Because in there was even more pain. Once you realise what's happened and it wasn't you, a lot of it is the other people and their bad manners. They just. I remember having. I can't remember what his name is now. He's from New Zealand, and he worked out. He thinks everybody's giving wisdom, but they're not. Because they're broken, they're giving you anxiety instead of wisdom. And I thought, when he said that to us a few years ago, I was like, wow, that's so right. Everybody thinks they're giving wisdom, but usually it's anxiety they're giving.
Well, I think the way I like to see it, and I'm not talking about people staying in abusive or unhappy relationships at all, but I think, and this doesn't have to be in a relationship, but this can be in any situation, I think that anybody who triggers you is giving you a gift.
Yes, they're a soulmate, aren't they? Just not necessarily a sexual one, but they're still a soulmate.
No, but I think what we don't realize is that when people trigger us, they're pointing to something in us that needs healing. But the thing is, we spend our time then blaming the person on the outside. It doesn't make that person in the outside not responsible for their own behavior and their own triggers, but it does mean that I can then use that situation and go, okay, how is this affecting me? What needs healing? And of course, then from a conscious place, I can then have appropriate boundaries when it comes to that person, whether it be that, I can come to them and apologize, or not see them at all because they haven't done their work on themselves. But, I think the triggers, when people trigger us, it is a gift. It's like a golden nugget. But I just wanted to say something else about, unhealed trauma I think, is why we see so much dis-ease, is that trauma, that energy, that emotion gets trapped in organs. And then that, along with all the other toxins that we have bombarding our body, whether it be EMFs and environmental toxins, then, they make this storm, and we get ill. So this is what brings us to our coaching or mentoring that we're offering, is that
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, we're wanting to help people walk through all of those areas to kind of, because that's freedom, really. I believe when I can free my mind, body, and soul, and I can be in a place of
Here and now,
and in the present. Yeah, exactly. What are you giving for Christmas? Your present.
Yeah, this is where freedom and,
freedom of the soul.
freedom of mind, body, and soul, the Trinity. And, that's what we aim for.
It is a bit weird though. When I was younger and I'd work things out, I would talk about it, and then the ones that hadn't sorted their life, well, you're talking about it, you're not over it. And I used to say, well, you're not over it because you can't talk about it. It's just a different side, isn't there?
Yeah.
But some of us, you see, I bet you Andrea is, we're empaths anyway. We're slightly different. We've got feeling. It hasn't been munched out of us.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder whether, I mean, I hear, the talk about NPCs and so on, and I accept that that's a possibility, but I'm also a little uncomfortable with it, because I like the idea that we're all from the same source. It's just that some of us might be on
More
our fifth
sensitive
cycle,
than others.
500th cycle,
Yeah.
and or it might be that particular energies are trapped in a particular way for a particular person. As Andrea was just saying, these traumas, these energies get trapped in our systems, and they can cause a neutering, a burning.
Yeah, because some people will never ever get over it and will be very introverted about it, and you might never even know. Yeah. I tried to say it to my dad. Dad, you don't realise why you're like you are. It's because of what happened to you when you were a child. But he doesn't want to listen to that.
No, but yeah, I think it's good to be able to talk about it, and talk about it in a way where it's like I'm able to see it, but I'm seeing it in a healthy way. So, like when I first found out about the 9/11 deception, if I can talk about that at all, but then I was really triggered about it. Now I can talk about it without feeling too much emotion about it. It's more like I can observe it rather than be caught up in it. And so, with a lot of people's young trauma, they can't talk about it, or they want to talk about it round and round and round, and never really let it go. So, if someone talks about the same, as a football fan, talks about that time they scored that goal. Did you see that goal they scored? And this is 20 years later. It's like, dude, you got to let that go, man. But it might come up, but he'll just go, yeah, that was a great goal, and then move on. But no, he's got to talk about it for 10 minutes. Oh, I was sitting there, and then I spilled my beer, and
do you think some of it's age?
On my nose.
Do you think some of it's age, though? I mean, I know that you've had a child a bit later in your life. So did I. My daughter came along when I was probably a bit younger than Andrea, but I was 38, so there's a bit of a gap. But I'm older now, and you can look at things different. I'm not running around little children. I know you are, but I'm not running around little children anymore. You've got more time to think, and that's where you work. You suddenly, well, I don't know. Loads of people woke up in 2016. It had nothing to do with age or sex. We just
a
mound of people woke up.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, carry on. No, I probably interrupted you. Carry on.
Well, I was grateful that in my sort of 2014 to 2017 period, before when ZZ came along, I did so much work, so much research. Andrea and I were just talking about how much we'd done on, our diet and cleaning, chelation protocols. We were really, it was, and I had this message come to me, and I was very clear by 2016. We're going to be tested really, really hard, and we're meant to be preparing for that. And so part of my test over these last few years has been to try and walk this road while caring for a small child, because that does add an awful lot to your plate, particularly if you're not prepared to hand him over.
What a little darling he was. Me and Mickey
Thank
watched him when you took him to the supermarket, and you're asking him all about the vegetables. And Nicky was going, look how intelligent he is.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and that's come with conscious effort, but I still get reproachment and disapproval from my family because I'm not taking the mainstream approach with his education and so on. And for now, it's working out fine, but it has required certain, has been demanding on our time, and so rightly it should be. When raising a child for the first 7 years and beyond, but the first 7 years is so important if we want to, be if we want to give them, the best possible child. I mean, so, we don't have any. We're not trying to say that we've got it all right, and we haven't implanted or imprinted in him certain traumas along the way. We've moved him around the world so much, and it's over 3 years now since we closed the door on our home of 10 years. So we've been on the road for 3 years, and that brings with it its own challenges when it comes to his own sense of stability. So I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet
But
too
he
hard,
doesn't know any different, though, if you know what I mean. Just because, if you stayed in a house, that would be one life, but you've had a different life, and he doesn't know any different.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's got a vast array of different experiences, and and it was part of my plan was to be super proactive in educating him, giving him numbers. He's phenomenal with numbers now. He's 5.5, and his divisions and multiplications that he does in his head would astound most people. And if you gave him an adult book, he would read 7 out of 10 words in that book quite easily, if not more. So he's a credit to our intention to have him never jabbed or we kept him on distilled water. There's been a few times where we've been on spring water or reverse osmosis, but in the main it's been distilled water. So we're trying anyway, and it is against the odds. We've had certain challenges from. Most recently, probably 3 months ago, we had a local education department here in the UK. You may have heard that the UK is getting a lot tighter on people who school their children, who educate their children at home.
They just want it always, don't they? Because that's what happened when we were locked down. A lot of people took, I'm not saying everybody did, but a lot of people took their children out of the mainstream anyway and decided to teach them at home.
And as a consequence of that, I think they've looked to button everything down even tighter. So they're trying to get you to tell you, show us what books they're doing or what tests they're doing and all of this kind of thing. But we think that learning in the world is pretty much the best way to learn things. So as you saw with that video in the shop, and I was doing that a lot. Obviously not during the face napping times where I had to stand in. I didn't want to stand in the supermarket trying to weigh vegetables and fruit with him with a mask on. So I didn't do much of that in that period of time. But outside of that, before that, and since then, he's learned numbers and weights and so on, and what are the names of the fruits and all of that, and he's learning that in the supermarket. You just have to take the time, and then if we use those self-cash checkout things, we'll prefer to go with the cash. He'll put the money in, he'll scan it and put the money in and see how much change we get back, and then we'll sit at home.
I bet you, as a kid, we all would love doing that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and work through the coins and so on. But it's really just, I think we're all trying to work our own way through this crazy game. But I think it's a spiritual. There's some kind of spiritual game going on here, and rather than characterizing it as a war, I think maybe as a test and a learning. So that, because if you leave this game at the end of your time, having just spent your time watching the football and drinking the beer, then you probably, I don't know, I can't say for sure that we reincarnate, but I think that there is a process of you'll just come back. We don't. Our soul or our higher self never dies. It's we are just perhaps here to learn something. We know from the Tartaria type information that it seems like this place has been populated much more before and got washed out, and then we come back and so on. And so whatever those truths are, I feel like if we can raise our own higher self, get closer and closer towards the center, towards the heart, towards the middle of the what's the word I'm looking for? The not maze, the labyrinth. Sorry, get closer to the center of the labyrinth for ourselves. Then we will have achieved the best that we could possibly achieve. But we know for sure that this game seems to feed off negative energy of keeping us in protestation,
low vibrational states,
or in subjugation. So you're either a Catholic or a Protestant, and I don't think we need to be either of those. So we can be our own master. And if you are
obviously,
your own
we're a
master,
lot cleverer than we believed that we were as well, and they don't want that. They don't want individuality. It's like we're being put through a military boot camp at the same time, because they're all about breaking the spirit down, aren't they? Making you one,
dumbing us down and reducing us, minimizing us. But we
break our spirit. Maybe they just know our psychology so well that they can use it to their advantage. And I was talking to Dave earlier about astrology and what Aquarius, the age of Aquarius is. And the age of Aquarius is technology and freedom and community, but it is technology. But you see, there's two types of technology. There's the man-made AI technology, and there's the technology that we carry in us. If we are in our wholeness and we are as close as we can be in this human experience to our spiritual selves, then we are very powerful, and we do have our own technology. But to tap into that, we have to be aligned. We have to be embodying that, or we have to be receptive to it. Maybe that's more important. We have to be receptive to the spirit moving through us, and through that is the technology. That's how we communicate, telepathically. And are we there yet? Well, some might be closer than others. Is it available to all of us? Yes. But are we able to use it? No, because our mind chatter, the ego, which is why they like to keep us in our minds, means that we can't be. But we have those, like you said, we're more powerful than we realize.
Yeah, that journey to yourself can take many, many years. To be a master, it might take many, many years. But you have the biggest, I say in Hangouts, that the biggest thing you can do for mankind is to know who you are as a person. Because once you do that, you make different decisions. You'll say yes and no and stick to it. And when you don't know who you are and you're carrying all that stuff that Andrea's talking around inside you, you make different decisions or don't make decisions. Your life will go a different way than the one that knows who it is. So that's one of the biggest things for mankind that you can do, is learn who you are as a person. You're living inside this body for maybe 80, 90 years, so it's best to know who you are.
Yeah, can I add another bit? Knowing who you are is one thing, but also I think being able to be in stillness and in quiet.
Yeah, you have to work your childhood out.
To be able to do that, because I think that's where, believe it or not, I think that's where space is. The outer space they're talking about is actually an inner space. It's a space where actually when we can be almost in nothingness is where you are kind of on the edge. That's a very vulnerable place to be. It's a place of not knowing.
My poem in my 20s, you make the walls high, your eyes are the windows into your soul, and that's what this poem's about. And then how much are you willing to let go, to share with another, to let a seed grow, is the last sentence. So yeah, I understand what you're talking about. And it's just so important. It can take you weeks, or it could take you years.
Well, I think it's a spiral. I think actually it is your life's work. I think that it is an ongoing thing, and you go deeper and deeper as the older you get, the wiser you get.
You can see why they want to grab children on the television at such a young age, can't you? They just want to get them as early as possible.
Well, I'd say we've probably been got at a lot earlier anyway. I mean, you just think about birth. You think about what is seen as normal birthing now, and it is nothing. There's nothing really normal about it, and so the whole process is already quite traumatizing for both the mother and the child. So it's starting,
Well, it's the most dangerous journey in your life you'll take. It's the most dangerous one. So, yeah, a baby being born. It's the worst journey you take.
Yeah,
I suppose you're so squashed, aren't you, to come out?
Yeah. So that's an interesting point to bring in this point. Part of the training I did was around Chinese medicine or TCM or Taoism. And of course, we're in winter now, and in particular, we're in this sort of the very dark part of the astrology of this month.
3 days from the shortest day.
And we're 3 days from the
shortest day.
Do you know
what? I was actually thinking, I was looking out the window, and it is actually getting really dark now, but there's still light, and it's 4:30. I thought that was a bit early. It's got darker later today.
Well, it should be
But from an energetic point of view, it is a time where we're supposed to be, and actually the astrology at the moment is because of Mars in retrograde.
Isn't Pluto coming over Christmas as well?
It's this real pull, but with winter, to go inward, because actually Dave and I were just doing a little bit of study on the whole winter, and it's the water element, it's the yin. It's a time where actually it requires you to go inward so Stillness. That you can restore and replenish.
Hibernate.
Because that energy, that vitality that you're going to need for the rest of the year needs replenishing. It needs storage. It needs
and sometimes letting things go, even just to go to sleep for a day, just give yourself a break. When it comes back, it's always a little bit different. It's when we keep worrying over and over, you just keep going on and on in your brain, then it never changes.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, worry and fear is the water element. It is the kidneys. That's where you store the energy of worry and fear. And of course, we know that worry and fear can take away your vitality,
your life force.
Actually, most people die of a short.
That's not very good. I've had stones. I had loads of stones. They were removed, I don't know, about 7 years ago. And my son nearly died in a car accident. That's what started it, I think. I started getting stomach problems. But a stone had gone into my bile duct. That's only as wide. The actual bile duct is as wide as one of those wires that connects to your phone, whether you charge it or your earphones. And I had a stone nearly an inch big in there, and it nearly killed me.
Okay, well, that's not your kidneys, though. That'll be your liver, and actually liver...
Well, it was bile. Bile's all to do with the kidney, and I just was orange. I was so ill. The bile was coming out in my body because everything was stuck. There was 6 stones on the way to my kidney. They were right next to my kidney. It was it was so painful. But anyway, it's all gone now. But I was just thinking, how ironic that I'd sorted myself out. I think I'd sorted myself out. But anyway, I don't have any problems anymore.
Yeah, your bile duct is connected to your
liver.
It's connected to your liver and your gallbladder, which will be a bile duct as well.
Don't have one of them anymore.
The energy of anger.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's right, because you don't realise what all those feelings are. Because really, we've been let down, and I think, as that word, we've been abandoned. We've been seriously abandoned. Either they left us mentally or physically. We've been abandoned.
Well, it's anger and yes, and I think actually most of us walk around with a fair amount of rage in our body, which has to be stored in your liver. Kidney, so that's liver and gallbladder, and the kidney and the bladder are where you carry worry and fear. And at the moment, being in the winter, being in the yin, meaning the water element, it's the kidneys and the bladder, and the time for rest and inward reflection, so that little seed, that your storage of vitality is able to be replenished for the rest of the year. But equally, astrologically at the moment, we are in a very introspective time, a time to go in and do the reviewing and the healing, and it might even feel for some, and I present this because it might even feel for some like an emptiness, a void, and that's okay.
It's one of the
There's a
biggest
saying,
operations they told me that they do for people now is gallstones. So it's obviously a lot of angry people then.
yeah. And interestingly, your lungs is grief and sadness. And so, and grief is another thing that we carry from childhood. You know, you lose something as a child, whether it be you lose your connection to God or spirit, or that you have a loss with a parent where you are heartbroken. Like I said, I think most children have a sense of heartbreak because your mother is your first intimate relationship, and you know, and if you don't get your needs met, then there's an element of heartbreak there.
Yes.
And again, and very subtle and not intentional, because you know, as parents, you know, you try your best, even though unconsciously you're parenting from your womb. So yeah, so yes, these things then manifest physically. But just to go back to the winter and astrology at the moment, it is a time for people to just be with whatever's there, rest, but can they be with? And there's a saying, whatever you can be with will let you be.
It's really good that you and Dave are doing this journey together, because these kind of things will split people up. Or yeah, they just do. But so it's really good that you're doing it together. And Dave said that. Dave, what were you saying just before we came online? That you're starting to do the, you know, you're starting to teach people and stuff. What do you call it? Coach people.
Coach people. Yeah, I do mentoring because, you know, I've obviously been on my own inner journey and had all of these things to confront over the last few years. And I've been on a training course with Beth Martin. And I am, you know, offering that to people, either Andrea and I, or me myself, to coach people, to help people with their own inner work, because this game, it seems to me, just loves to provide people with entertainment, and whether you're awake or asleep, there is so many things to keep you in that anger or in that grief, in that fear, and we do ourselves an injustice by staying in that, and we can do better. And so I'm offering that. I mean, we've started a new web page called the Shoreline Mentoring, which maybe you can put a link to that in your show notes. But the Shoreline Mentoring is that's what Andrea and I call ourselves, because the shoreline is the place between the hard and the soft, the wet and the dry, the contraction and expansion, the yin and yang. And so we are the Shoreline Mentoring, and you know, people can just get in touch with me, and we can have a discovery call and see whether there's some meat on that bone, whether they'd like to avail themselves of a few months of a one-on-one support work to see if,
I think the biggest thing is most people don't think anybody understands them.
Yeah, and I think the advantage with
like
me
you say,
is
maybe
that
it's not grief of losing someone, but there's still grief in there, and that grief stops them. I don't know. I'm not like that. I'm more extroverted as a personality. That's why, and obviously you are, because that's why we're having hangouts. That's why we're talking about this stuff. But a lot of people aren't and can't do it.
Yeah, you'd be considered more yang. You know, so we tend to be more yang in the truth community. And I think why you were saying what resonated with me when you said it's good that Andrea's walked with me, because, you know, in the early days back in 2015, and I was a late starter, back in 2015 when I was angrily going, you've got to see this truth, you've got to see this truth, you've got to see this truth, it was something that was coming between us, you know. And then Andrea was able to eventually see these things, but then bring her more yin energy to the party, because, you know, like the yin yang symbol and the shoreline, it's the balance, it's the point, the shoreline where land and water meet. That's the place that you want to be. You don't want to be up too far in the dry and down too deep in the water. You've got to be somewhere in the middle of that. And so she has encouraged me by bringing her yin energy to the party to have a more balanced view of what it is that we're seeing, what it is that we're going through, you know. So the interestingly enough, the lady who runs this course that I have been on called Journey Code, Beth Martins, she felt like, because she only sort of came to some of the deeper truths with the 2020 corona thing. So for her, she's a kind of newcomer to the truth community, but a long time in the coaching community. And so when she heard my story, she was like, you're exactly the kind of person that the truth community needs, because you speak their language. You speak the yang, but you've got that yin energy about you. And so I'm honing my own story too. I don't claim to be the complete article, but I have been putting a lot of time and effort into developing myself, and in this offering that I can make to other people. So the Shoreline Mentoring, there is you can also go, my Trinity 4 YouTube channel is currently on a 2-week strike, but we have the Trinity's website, we have the Trinity's YouTube channel, and we also have our website, which is called www.lovetruthsovereignty.com. And I have put some articles on that, lovetruthsovereignty.com. I've put some articles on that. I've started writing, stuff there. I am going to get into blogging more frequently. But that's another way that people can get in touch with me through that. And then we've got an Instagram page called The Shoreline and the Trinities. So there are a few vehicles.
Is that the way you're going now? Are you not going to be doing much, well, whatever you want to call it, protesting?
Activism.
Yeah, activism.
Andrew's laughing. Yeah, no, that's
Can't help himself.
Yeah, I can't help myself. I shoot myself in the foot more often than not when it comes to that. I just can't help myself but try and tell people the truth, So no, I mean, like I've actually, I've got flyers with me. I've got a banner with me just in case I get that opportunity to go into the
That's it. I've got to do it. Out I go. Yeah.
I do, but
Can
I'm
I ask
also
you something
mindful,
else as well, because it just came into me.
Before you ask me that, I'm mindful that, as Andrew was saying about this being the winter time, maybe it's important that I nourish myself, because going out there into the street is quite hard on me. You get energetically it's tough. So I'd rather be doing it in the springtime than in the winter time.
I bet, yeah. It's colder.
But don't get me wrong. I still like, if there's a Christmas market, maybe I can just go do a little bit of flyering in this town we're in or what have you, and just go and
You've
shout.
got a message, and it'd be terrible if he didn't get
so
it up
that,
there.
no, that video you played of me from being in Oxford, in 2018, I knew when I gave that message, that video, I was like, damn, I could have done that a lot better, and I still feel that I can, that I have
that
much
tiny
more
bit
to
of
offer
raw
the world.
was good though. I like that.
The what is?
You
What do
tiny
like?
bit raw, say. I liked it.
Yeah. No, I like that too, and I think that won't go away. And of course, last year in South Africa, I was like a lion walking up and down that beach. There was times where people could hear me from hundreds of yards away. I sometimes really, it wasn't on camera. Most of it wasn't on camera, and of course, all of it got washed away when they took my channel away last year. But so I had a phenomenal time doing street activism. Really incredible contacts. In fact, one African Zulu man sent me a message this morning or last night. Someone who I'd contacted through, made friends with through doing activism, and he's so taken by what it is that I'm trying to do, and hopes that we can do some stuff together in the future. And then a preacher from a church, I went to a church there and spoke to them about the corona. And he contacted me the other day and said, I'd love to be able to do like a Zoom call with you in my parish and blah blah blah.
Oh wow, that's good, Dave.
So he was, he's kind of also praying for the funds, because they don't really have the money to put a TV in their church and then stream me doing a chat with them. But this was a Zimbabwean minister with a Zimbabwean parish in Durban. And so I get so much joy from doing things like that. I feel so validated as a person, but it doesn't pay the bills either. And it also, it's also like a level of consciousness that I love to be there, but at the same time, it's just like, saying, I play rugby, for example. Well, if I played rugby and I showed a certain amount of aggression on the field, I wouldn't be showing that aggression back home with my 5-year-old child. So I have to be the whole thing, you see. I have to be the warrior, but I also have to be the lover, and I have to be the brother and the father and all of these things, and the teacher too. And in teaching people,
maybe that tells you how far you've moved along though, because I thought about counselling myself, and you can only do that when you know who you are, or you're quite sort of settled in yourself.
Yeah, and doesn't, for me, I kind of thought I knew who I was, and I could have been a counselor many years ago. I could have been that. But and I have sort of counseled friends, and Andrea and I have always been that kind of those kind of people. But when everything, my world got turned upside down end of 2014-15 with revelations that blew my mind, it changed everything. And then of course, we'd gotten onto a good thing with activism in 2018 particularly.
Yeah, I think making up makes you a little bit angry, because you realise you've been let down again.
Yeah. And so you have to go and find yourself again, and at the end of 2018, I get this doctor offers me, after we did that very popular Guardian article, that one that got 2.5 million views. I got approached immediately after I did my piece in Speaker's Corner by this guy who then offered me like a treatment that would help me even be a better speaker, right? And he does this treatment on me a few weeks later in a hotel in London, and it messed me up completely. And so I've been like, that's 4 years ago now, exactly. And I've been on a journey of rediscovering myself, coming through that trauma. And of course, then we had the COVID, everything happening, and
staying strong.
Yeah, us being 6 months off grid in Portugal, and a year in South Africa, and trying to find out feedback here in the UK. So, I've had a lot of things to contend with in order to get to my own, and start finding my own equilibrium such that I could.
Yeah, last time we had a hangout, Andrea was talking about it all then, if you remember. I don't know, it was about 6 months ago now, wasn't it? Yeah. But now you're doing it.
So yeah, I'm, and I'm not, I don't, as I said earlier, but I don't profess to be the finished article, but I know from whence I come, and I know that people are on their own journey and at different stations along that journey, and so for those people who are at that point where they go, well, I don't want to be a Protestant anymore. I want to be, I want to work on the inner self and raise that inner game.
I've got one for you. Her name is Yolanda Vendervelt, something like that. I think she's German. I've got one of her books up here, but she did another one. She said, life is like a house. She said, there's the basement, like the first floor, second floor, maybe there's a third floor, and then the attic. She said, but down in the basement, it's dark and dingy down there and damp. No one knows where they're going. No one can see anything. No one's sorted everything out, and they're running around not knowing what they're doing. And as you move up the floors, by the time you get to the attic, you're in unconditional love.
Yeah, I mean,
and most people live their life in the basement of life.
Can I add to that? Obviously, she's not here to speak to it, but you see, if you are like the house, then you want to be the complete house. So by the time that you're done, you don't want to be living in your attic. You actually want to be living in the lounge, which is probably on the ground floor or the first floor. But you also want to have cleaned out the basement.
Well, when you get to the next floor, you know what's wrong, but you haven't sorted it out. The next floor is you're sorting it out. By the time you get... So there's a spider's web up there, but I'm not going to knock it out of the way because life will take care of that, because now you trust in life. It's just talking about a story of realising where you are in life, and most people are in the basement. They don't know what the hell's going on down there. They're always bumping into each other. It's dark, cold, dingy. So that was just an explanation to things. But I like that book. These are books I read that changed my view in things. Because your parents and all these people can't tell you any of this stuff.
Yeah, I like it. I like it too. You see, when when I talk about the sine wave, and that if you imagine a straight line, horizontal line with a sine wave coming through it, yeah, but you allow for two sine waves slightly offset to come through. You have a top and you have a bottom as those sine waves make their S bends over across through that line, yeah. And at the top of the sine wave, you've got what is the blue, and that's the sky. And at the bottom sine wave, underneath the horizontal line, you've got the red, which is the earth or the magma. So you've got the hot stuff, the dirty stuff, the sexy stuff or whatever, down in the bottom. And you've got the cold stuff, which is just like our sky that we see in the world around us. And the heavens, as all the religious people talk about, which is up in the sky, in the above. So what we're meant to, I believe, is we're meant to alchemize and balance the two, the red and the blue, to come to this purple or green line, which is the earth. Earth is green, green is heart, earth is heart as an anagram. And so what the religious and the super spiritual people sometimes I think are doing is they're spending all their time up in the attic. They're like super up in the attic, meditating all day, yogarizing all day. They never go down into the basement. And I say to people that, but your house, if you're the master of the house, then there should be no part of the house.
You should be able to just live in it, shouldn't you? And not, there shouldn't be a problem anywhere.
Exactly. It's like you've cleaned out the basement. You spend some time up in the attic, but you also go down into the kitchen and you make a nice meal and you maybe watch a movie or whatever. You spend time with your family and all that kind of thing.
I know what the words are. Know yourself, see yourself, accept yourself, and be yourself.
Exactly. And you are the hot and the cold. You are the red and the blue. You are the highs and the lows, So there should be no, in religion, they don't want you to, the sin is the sine wave, and they don't want you to kind of, if you shouldn't sin, you masturbated or you watched a thing or you whatever, now, this is the problem, is that they want to make you feel bad for having done something like that, like, you lusted, what a dreadful being you are, but that's your basement, and you should be able to go into your basement and go, look, I've kind of cleared out most of the cobwebs. I may not have all of the cobwebs, I may not have it all, but really I've dealt with the moss or the damp or the dank and the mold and stuff like that. I have done that. But if you spend all your time up in the attic, the mold is going to overtake your basement. I promise you. You've got to get down there, dehumidify it, clean it out. And then, go back to the ground floor, and the ground floor is that middle line, is that horizontal line. But if you don't go up into the attic, it'll be all musty, it'll be rank, and so on. So that's where I would sort of offer for this author to a different way of thinking about it, is that it's your house and your temple, your heavens, or your head. If you live too much in your head or if you live too much in your groin, you're not going to be in balance. And the neutral green earth is the balance point that I think what we're actually striving for, and that's the center of the labyrinth is there.
So we obviously don't really trust ourselves or trust anybody else. That's what that is then, isn't it? But that's in there as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, you know how it is. It's like, I haven't been into my basement for years.
Do you think it's different with you though, Dave? You can say these things because you've stood out there, and even in that video, you just went for it. Like, people just can't do that. Maybe people are amazed that you could stand there for like nearly, 20 minutes saying this stuff. So you've obviously branched over things anyway to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and and that's, I mean, I don't know whether that would be considered to be basement work, or or the loft work. But I think I've been needing to spend a little bit more time in the attic and work out some of that stuff. But really, is to get myself into a place of neutrality and non-judgment and self-love and so on, and then help others to do that too.
I know what you mean as well. Years ago,
I won't ever stop doing activism, I'm sure.
I had my own social club here. To me, it wasn't about how old you were, whether you were a girl or a boy. It was just about getting a group of people together. So we had open evenings. We went out for meals, theme meals. Went to the races. Went to the cinema. We did all these kind of things. But the one thing to the people that were there on the open evening would always have a group hug, and it meant something to those people. It was probably the only time in that week, or every other week we did it, that they were having a hug.
Mm.
Do you know what? At the end of the day, if we could all see it that we're walking each other home, we're holding each other's hands, home being home to the heart or home to, because actually I think all of us have a longing in us, and it's a longing to be back in, in that connection back to our God, our source, whatever it is that you believe in. But I think that that's what we're all doing here. We're walking each other home, and if you come from that place, then those people that we say are asleep, or that we, family members that are on their own path, then instead of feeling angry with them or frustrated with them, we can have more compassion for them walking their path. And really, when we're doing our own work, then
because you kind of, if you're not feeling very good and you don't trust the world, it's like being brave to do it. Once you've done it, if everything's uncertain in your life. Once you branch over that, it's not. Like, say, getting divorced. You've got an uncertain life now. Your whole life's changed, and you can't get into your life for a while, and then you realise that you are. It's more frightening maybe for people, but once you've done it, you realise how good it is for you, because you need to do it.
I'd say that uncertainty is not a bad thing. I think uncertainty or not knowing is not a bad thing. This world wants us to have certainty all the time. I actually think that being alive, being vulnerable, being in that not knowing is where life is.
Yeah, I think that's it. Certainty is the word. In an uncertain place where we're actually not going to stay here, we're going to die. So it's a bit weird but that's what we want.
But we're here for our evolution, and the word love, if you write it backwards, is evolve. So you're almost saying evolve.
Oh my, yeah.
Yeah, so getting back to the heart and evolving, because actually, people talk about new age and old age. Like the old age is surely like the religious stuff, and the new age is whatever. But both of them are actually very much about being in the attic, in the head. And I that's why I keep trying to push this idea of the heart being, the center of the labyrinth is the heart, is where the love is, and true evolution will come from love. Wherever you are and whatever your place is that. And then of course when you're doing your social group, and showing and spreading that love with people, it would have been such a rewarding feeling for you and for those who were experiencing it. We come from love. We are love. When I took the DMT, that was in 2015, it was just, I was effused in the biggest love, the greatest love that I've ever imagined. And so I believe we come from love, and we're meant to evolve our way or love our way back to the heart.
As a kid, I felt that. As a kid, I knew how to levitate somehow, but I couldn't hear. And love, where we'd come from, was just masses of love.
Yes.
Well, because actually, we don't feel love. We are love. Love is a state.
It's a feeling that flows.
It is a feeling, but it's a state. It's a state that we're in. We all are essentially love. If we think of ourselves as being God, or a fractal, or an experience of God, then essentially we all love. But through our trauma, we are all, not in that state of self-love.
But what does that show you when most of the world is a narcissist? It just shows you that it hasn't happened to a lot of people, has it?
But you know what narcissism actually means?
It's something has happened to you in your childhood and you don't ever get over it.
Yeah, narcissism is just, it's a wounding.
Yeah.
it's all these words that they become very loaded negatively, and then we use them as a way of judging someone. It's the same with addiction. The word addiction is such an ugly word. You know, if you're an addict, and by the way, I think we're all addicted in some way to something.
Yeah.
Addiction is a solution to a problem, and that problem normally is pain.
Same with narcissism. It's an expression of a problem.
Same with narcissism. It's really, you're a narcissist because you have learned mechanisms that are generally worked as a child, but as an adult they no longer do. And you're just, you know, you're using those same survival mechanisms, and they don't work anymore. In fact, what they're doing is they're probably hurting you and another person. But if we start to see like the narcissist, and I'm not saying someone should stay in a relationship or put up with behavior from a narcissist, but I think, you know, someone said to me a while back, so what do you think about narcissists? And I said, well, I am one. And that, you know, that's a hard thing to say, because most people will see narcissists as these, but narcissism is, it's a wounding, and it's a frozen moment in time, and your trauma isn't, you aren't trauma. Trauma is something that happens to you, and it's something that's, you know, a wounding that needs healing. It's a frozen moment in time. It's something that you need to go back to and bring to wholeness. So if we stop to, you know, the whole addiction thing, if we stop seeing addiction as something that is disgusting and bad, and rather see it as, you ask most,
that's what I was saying about how people think they're giving wisdom. They're not giving wisdom. They're giving their version of anxiety. Because, like you're saying, we shouldn't label, everything's labelled wrongly. It's all wrong, isn't it?
Well, it's because we've taken words that actually, if you look at the word addiction, it doesn't mean, it's not a bad thing. But of course now, you know, we punish addicts, really, we judge addicts. And really, all an addict is doing...
It's the same with like anarchist. Anarchist means a freedom fighter. But when you mention anarchist, they go, oh, no, you know, they see it as a bad word.
Yes, if you ask an addict, why do they use the substance, or it doesn't have to be a substance, it can be shopping or eating or social media or relationships, what do they get from it? And most of it is they get control.
Yeah, power.
They get power, they get a relief, it eases their pain, and really, so it's a solution.
But they're just fixes, aren't they? They never sort it out. You need another fix after that.
Yes, but
are we adrenaline junkies?
No, I don't think it's adrenaline junkies. I think what it is that you're using whatever it is to fill or
the gap,
fix or ease some pain that is underneath it, because that's really what's going on. There's a pain.
It's so sad that it goes in when you're little tiny children, isn't it? It's a shame that we can't be left to be innocent for as long as possible. But as little children, this is how they feel.
Well, I mean, this is why it's important that us adults start doing the work, because the best thing we can give the human race is our healing, so that we can parent and pass down. I
still think it's hard, you know, as a kid, kids somehow shut things out and deal with it. I did, and we talked about this before. But as an adult, when I was going through it, there was how my parents felt, there was so many more extra things in there, and it happened so long ago, it was harder to sort it out, because no one could ever help me anyway, really, because the man had died. But
isn't the shutting it out like a form of protection? When you shut it
absolutely.
out.
I just wanted to be understood, and my parents didn't understand it at all.
Yeah,
it broke my heart. In fact, I felt more mistreated by them than the person that did it, because they just didn't want to know at all.
Yes, but really, that's why it comes down to, it's not my fault, it's now my responsibility, because
so only you can sort yourself out. If you feel like that, or you've got these things going on and you know you do, only you can sort it out. And even if you can't necessarily sort everything out, because I said my grandfather had died when I was 16 when he died. I wouldn't have done it then. I was doing it in my 20s. But it's how you feel about that person. There's just two things in life you can't change: death and the weather. But even death, you can change how you feel about it if it's you. You know.
Yes, but what I'd say is that even that person that's died, really, you see, coming to wholeness means that you are also able to forgive and let go, and really, forgiveness is about you. Really, it's you.
Not about the other person.
It's not about the other person. You know, the other person, you can't change someone else. You can only change the
Yourself.
way you show up. Yes, exactly, and you free yourself. That's
a really good thing why you and Dave, have done this together. This could rip people apart.
Well, do you know what? Relationships, I believe, are require two people to be doing their own work. You see, I think, again, this is another thing that we've got completely wrong. Relationships are there to complete us, or they're there to give us something. They really aren't. We're there walking alongside each other, journeying together, and through the bump, I always say bump, which is basically I bring my trauma or my wounds or my beliefs, and I bump up against the other person who will trigger me. It's an opportunity rather to evolve and grow. We're there to help each other.
I think if you know who you are a bit, you've got to find people who are more like you.
Well, I don't know if you necessarily have to find people that are more like you. You have to find people that are committed to doing their own evolving, their own work. Because really, that's essentially why we're here. We're not here. Yes, we're interrelational beings. So I'm not for a second saying we shouldn't be in relationships and we shouldn't love each other and we shouldn't get all that from each other. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that another person isn't there to give us something or to fix something or to fill something in us. They're there as an opportunity for us to learn and grow. And in everything, which is why I say triggers are a gift. They're a gift to you, really. But most of us spend our time blaming the other person, and then you remain in that victim consciousness.
I think you do that to start with, though, because when one of my marriage to the boy's dad ended, I blamed him for everything, and then one day I realised that he went out to work all day, and when he came home, he probably just wanted to sit there. But I'd been with the kids all day. When he came home, oh great, he's home, I can talk to him. And I suddenly realised that I might have understood a bit about him a bit more, and that changed everything. Then I stopped blaming him for everything.
Mm.
That's just where I was. I just felt, I was in this position because of him.
What you were bringing, with every relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship, a friendship, even the relationship with the government, we can say, oh, it's all them to blame, and I'm not absolving anybody that is a tyrant or controlling or manipulating, but it's how we respond to that. And when you start to heal and become more conscious, then you can start to have boundaries and say, well, I'm not going to allow that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. When you don't know who you are, you go, yeah, I might do, I might not. Yeah, I'm going, no, I'm not going. Yes, I am. But when you know who you are, you make your decisions and you stick to them.
Well, you make
until you get more information, and then you might change your mind then. But
exactly. Well, that's the unknowing. Hey, can I be in relationship? And I think that's a very important thing when it comes to which one I'm still learning and evolving in, is that can I be in a place of unknowing? Because when we bring trauma, we make a decision. Here's a little practice. There's a glass. There's two glasses in a room. Wine glasses in a room on a table with a cigarette that's been stubbed out. There's music playing, and there's no one in the room. Can you tell me what you think happened there?
Oh, you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Well, there was people there, and then there wasn't.
Well, no, some people will go, oh, there was a couple there, they're having an affair, they've left the room to go and have sex. We'll make up a whole story based on what we see in that room. And we do that unconsciously in all areas of our lives. We'll see a situation, and based on our own experience, we will make stories up as to what's happening. And those stories are based on our past, because the stories, I call them stories, but the memories we have in our mind, which, by the way, our
Aren't
mind...
probably very good, are they? They always have a
Well, no,
negative outcome.
it's not that they're not good, it's that they're based on the past. Your mind is just
Yeah, but
like
that's
a
all we
story
can. That's all you can go on, isn't it? Though, is the past. By the way, just saying, you can't go on an unknown future, and you're here. Well, you should be here and now, but that's what we do. I see that. Yeah, that's all
Well,
we
no,
can go on is the past.
I say that we actually can we let the past go, but the only way you can do that is if you heal those past. If you think about frozen moments or experiences, you suffer a trauma, you make a decision, and then you will use those in any future or present moments as what's actually happening. But when you heal, can you just be in the unknowing?
I use this phrase, don't let the wake steer the ship. You know, the wake being the churn behind the boat. Obviously, the captain of the ship has experience of all sorts of weather conditions. So that experience that he or she gained over the years of his captaincy of that ship, which is your wisdom that can carry you through. But if you, for example, 10 years ago as the captain of that ship went through a terrible storm at night, you know, and then you allowed every night that you were at the helm to make you to become at it from fear. Oh, we're about to be hit by a terrible storm. We're about to be hit by a terrible. It'd be like, no, that was 10 years ago. You know, yeah, you should be able to handle the next storm because of your experience that you got, but you can't let the wake steer the ship. And I think that's a good maxim for life, is that learn from the experiences, but don't be kind of trapped by them, you know. Oh, a bloke treated me bad, all blokes are bad, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, this book I was talking about, I'm okay, you're okay. In it says that what happens is you're in these states. You're either a child, and children have broken cookies, they have mannerisms, or you're stuck in with the parent, and you know what parents are like, and you know your parents will scold you and point their finger at you, stamp your feet, so you do that to yourself. But we should be adults. And adults treat things differently. They think about things. They think, okay, I'm going to go for that. But a child and the parent, they just react. And you see, you're either still in child form, you're either your parent treating you like your parents treated you, or you're an adult. It takes quite a lot to get to an adult, because you've got to learn and go through. But it says, when someone knocks on the door of life, which one's answering? Your child, your parent, or your adult?
Yeah, and I mean, what I've learned is that it can go deeper than that. There's the rebel, there's the warrior, there's, you know, the peacemaker.
But we do have that flight and fright thing as well inside, don't we?
Different archetypes, Karen, which can come into play in different situations, you know. So for example, the mailman comes to the door, and it's one kind of response, or a delivery guy. You know, you could come in, you know, you're the homeowner, and it's the blah 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 blah. But a policeman comes to the door, and you could drop into the child archetype, you know, or a good-looking person of the opposite gender comes to the door, and a different version of yourself will come into play depending on where you are.
Are we actors? Are we actors?
Yeah, we are, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a matter of understanding that, and understanding that in certain situations we drop into certain archetypes depending on our experience, depending on our understanding of these things, you know. So for me, like, you know, the one where the blue siren is coming up behind you, the police are coming on the door, or whatever. There's a certain kind of you know, rebel or warrior type archetype that comes into play that may serve me. It may be necessary to be that, but it may not serve me in every case. So it's a matter of understanding that and having some control over that, and particularly if we're in, say, the child state, and you know, so it is a little bit more nuanced, and it's not to say.
But in a way, we are grown-up children. We're just big children.
Yes.
So it's a bit. Yes. So yeah, I over the time I've done, you know, like Linda L. Hay. That was another one, healing the. What was that one? Like, you're okay in your life. I've done healing the shame that binds you. I've done the whole lot.
Shame.
Because that's what another thing that gets us is our shame, but people don't talk about it.
Yes. Yes, and we are shamed from young, and it's a great way of being
I don't think our
controlled.
parents realised when they said some of the things they did that we would remember them as an adult.
What did they say to us 2 years ago? Stay at home, save lives, blah 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 blah. All of those mantras they were giving to people was about shaming and guilting people into behavior. So yeah, we are children in adults' bodies. That's true, and that's okay because we're all in that condition. So once we know that, we have the opportunity to grow from that, and I think it's that maturation process that we are offered to take in this journey, or we just continue to stay in the rebel, want to fight it, or kind of archetype, and we don't move through those stages to becoming the highest version of our potential selves.
And it helps turning the television off, because don't forget, that's a 30-second wonder, isn't it? As long as it can flash all across your face in 30 seconds, and of course,
yeah.
That's the wrong way. You need space and time to do it anyway. You need to go into yourself and sort it out. Everybody who hasn't done this, so you need to do it.
Yeah.
It's a need, really, isn't it? Because then we become stronger as people. More people have woken up then, maybe, because they do know who they are.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't, I had this, really nice idea of everybody waking up in my lifetime or in the next lifetime of my son or whatever. But, I don't know, because time is a sort of man-made construct, and
well, that's maybe why now it's happening, because we have woken up and they've got to control us. They can see it because they own YouTube, they own Facebook, and they can see it and they can cut you out there. Like, for instance, we've both got strikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're always warning you in their system. BitChute's not so bad. You can more or less, you can put on more or less what you want in there. They're a little bit different, but, I have a family on YouTube, but it is quite difficult to fit in all the time because YouTube are trying to kill me all the time.
Yeah, but the best thing that you can do, the biggest two fingers up to the system, is to find this inner love, this inner kind of do this inner work, because but like having to kind of, I've found this last year, trying to regain just to get 1,000 subs.
Do you think a lot of people feel alone, and that's why it happens as well? Like, it's already happened, but so many people feel alone inside.
Yeah.
And if you say, well, you need to go to counselling, I'm not going to counselling. But really, it's better to sort yourself out. You might need a little bit of counselling.
Yeah. I mean, let me say, obviously, given the journey that
I've been on,
you,
what you do, you're not going to mentor people. You need somebody like that.
Yeah, I had some counselling 15 years ago, and I think with the greatest respect, I think the difficulty is that, for us anyway, is that, when people are trying to counsel you in the system and they're like completely buying into the system and you're getting that kind of counseling, it's like, excuse me. I think that's, do what you can get to, and do the, I wouldn't discourage someone from doing some counseling, but I just think like,
you've got to learn to be kind to yourself, which is quite a hard thing, but you've got to stay strong as well at the same time.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, it is a horrible journey. A lot of people don't want to take it, pretend it's not happening, and not being just to men, right? Because it probably isn't just men, it's women as well. But, when we look at what we're like as people, men can forget about, they say, when you go out for a meal, men want to forget about it and talk about gadgets and gizmos, and women see it as psychotherapy. There's a whole chance to talk about it. Men don't want to talk about it. It's those people that don't want to talk about it and shove it away. It's always going to be there if you don't sort it out. It will always cause you problems. Always.
Yeah.
I live a lot. Since I did this whole thing, my poem is the end result of it. Why be afraid of your emotional dealings? I'm much more at peace with myself. You've got to be at peace with yourself.
You are, but are you at peace with the world out there?
I am when I go out there, but I worry because I see people listening to all the wrong stuff. Yeah,
Because
in
I
my
think
own
one of the things
local
that
life. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
at
one of the
peace.
things that I've had to work through,
But I'm
and
always
still
around
working
people
through it.
who aren't at peace. You know,
Yeah,
one
but
place
I
I go and
sense.
they give me their bad moods all the time. It just does my head in. I don't want their mood in my head. But I'm sensitive and they like it and
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
aggressive and I think,
yeah.
oh.
But I still sense the anger that you carry from with the system, because and I totally empathize with that.
I felt let
I
down. I worry now because I just
mm.
worry what, we should have all woken up by now, really.
Well, I mean, that's us deciding the timeline and trying to think
Why did a
whatever.
section of us wake up? Because it sort of made it more hell for you. Because you're never going to
Yeah,
agree with what's happening.
yes, that I can relate to. Is sometimes is like, shit, why didn't I take the blue pill? But
And Dave, you understand, don't you? I mean, not that we will, but when you were in the Globe thing, it was much easier because you didn't really think. You just watched the television. It
yeah,
told you everything.
yeah, yes. Although, I mean, yeah, no, as a sort of headline, I just simply agree with that. Yeah, but I do think. So I do think, yeah, taking the red pill and then getting angry with the system
I
and
suppose
so
they're
on.
just processes of a kind of grief. Letting go of the GLOBE. It's grief. Like you're letting go of a lifestyle because you're looking at things differently
Yeah,
now.
well, and coming to terms with being lied to by mommy and daddy, about Santa and all of that. It's
But I've lied. I did it to my children. I didn't
yeah,
realise, but I do now.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, now your school teachers and your prime minister and all of these are somehow colluding, even if they don't realize it, colluding in some great cover up and deception, and young children are being indoctrinated into that same deception today, and we seem powerless to stop that. And that is something that is very easy to kind of leave you stewing, and pissed off. So I totally get that, and then, which is why I still feel like I will go out into the street and I will speak I will make my voice heard in future for sure. But I want to do it coming at it from a place of love, not a place of rage.
Mm.
And you know why? Because it's in my own best interests. Even if this world isn't meant to wake up in the next century, it's in my own best interest for my own good. Because one of the
But I think
things,
you get more like that when you've worked yourself out because you're not thinking about all that stuff anymore. So it's
yeah,
easy to go
because
out and say things because you know.
well, yeah, but one of the things about Tartaria, for example, is that I was awake-ish by the time Tartaria started making any sort of headlines, and I saw my friends starting to make huge gains in terms of their YouTube following for taking the bites out of the Tartaria apple, and I was kind of tempted to do that, but I resisted it, and I feel like in a way I'm kind of glad now that I didn't, because then I would be trying to maintain that that sideshow, for whatever truth is in Tartaria, and we know the building. I still love walking around these old buildings and checking them out and going underground and all that sort of stuff. But people can
It's a
see that on
part
my
of it,
channel.
Me and Mickey, we did
But
the same things. We go around churchyards and,
love it,
well, he
love
broke
it.
his
I
leg, didn't he?
love
But we
walking it.
still
But
go
then I
out and
enjoy it.
try and.
Yeah. But that's our history, there's history in it. However, like, if it becomes the only thing that you're focused on, then you lose the focus on yourself. And what this game does is that it sees, oh, look, this guy's getting a little bit awake. Let me offer him something else to keep him entertained,
But
And
also, if we're
then
not learning, we're dead, really, inside. You've got to always, that's part of being here is learning.
learning, know thyself, and know, we microcosm, macrocosm. So it's
And
good
when
to
you've
kind
learnt
of know the
yourself, you can
outside
help
world.
other people then, can't you?
Yeah, yeah, and we want to be teachers and informants and so on. But are you going to do that, from a loving, balanced place, or are you simply going to be another teacher, scarred, damaged by? Because there's good teachers that you come across in your life, but you're like, damn, dude, you're a good teacher, but you still teach people that they're a monkey, that evolved monkey that lives on a globe, So that really undermines your teaching. So whatever subject matter you're in, it's great. It's just that, are you totally lost in that subject, or have you done the work on yourself? Because one thing for sure is that all of us have been put in this sort of bear pit, and all of us have been somewhat traumatized, and all of us need to find our way into our own center, into our own labyrinth, heart, love, evolution, and find out that for ourselves, as well as, or then become the best possible teacher, in the way that the character we call Jesus possibly was that he'd done his own evolution, and he was a guy who saw who we are and understood who we were really. And yes, he was calling out the church and knocking over their precious, baubles and so on and so forth. But he was doing it from a place of love, not from a place of, rage and disturbance. So, and that's what I love to leave people with, is this idea that it's great to do the external work, but don't forget, you are the most important thing here. You are the center of the universe. And so we have to clean the basement. It's all good and well to mow the lawn and paint the outside of the house, but if you haven't cleaned your own basement,
you haven't got good foundations,
yeah, if you haven't dusted your own attic out, then it doesn't matter what people think on the outside can see. The truth is inside.
It might seem all petty as we're talking to this, and maybe a lot of people have done it or haven't done it, but it's really important that you do.
It's absolutely, it's the only journey that you're here for. And this game is going to keep, it's going to keep upping the ante. It's going to give you a new neighbor who's like polished their house even better on the outside and got a newer lawnmower. And you're like, oh shit, my grass isn't looking as good as theirs, kind of thing. And you're going to mow twice a week instead of once a week. And it's like, no, don't give it. It doesn't matter about that. Go and clean your own house, and then you don't really mind so much that your garden isn't quite as tidy as the other person. Your garden will show how much love you got, and your flowers will grow. They will respond to the good energy that you've got, because we are energy systems. And as Andrea said earlier on, if these energy systems get blocked in the attic or in the loft, it makes in the basement, it doesn't make any difference. It's going to cause structural failure over time within your own building, and your own building is the most important thing, not mine, not the government's, not NASA. It's really up to you. Even the Vatican, these things are not important. It's you who is important. And this is what Jesus was trying to tell people, is that you are, you are created in God's image. You are the center of the universe. And I use this on my website, lovetruthsovereignty.com. I use I use this phrase, you and I verse, which is you and I speaking. We are creating our own world through our vibration, through our energy. And if my attic is rancid, then my energy that I'm creating with is going to be rancid. It's going to be affected.
Yeah, you got to have good energy.
This is all good vibration, sister. So that's what I'd like to close on today, is to say, it's all about a good vibration, but that has to come from the heart. It has to come from within. Home is where the heart is. And heart is earth. We live on the earth. When we leave the earth, we go some other place, but we don't need to go there now. You don't need to go, oh, well, I need to be all heavenly now, or I need to be all hell-like now, or whatever. It's you need to be on the earth, in the earth.
Well, if you're here and alive, your mission isn't over.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you have. I know, obviously, old dogs and new tricks is difficult, but you have the opportunity while you're still breathing, and breath or breathe is an anagram for ether. There's a spare B in there, but it's an anagram.
Yes, we're always breathing in that free energy, aren't we?
That energy is ether, and that's the knowledge. The water bearer Aquarius is bringing knowledge and energy in the ether and our breath, and that's why they were shutting off our breath. They want people breathing poorly and poor air and so on. But while you have breath, you have the opportunity to make something of being on the earth, and that's really all we can ask for. The chakra system shows you that the heart is a green chakra.
Colour, yeah. Chakra's green. Love is green.
Yeah, and the earth is green. The sky is blue, which is the same as the chakra colors. The blues and so on are in the head, and the reds and the dark ones, the browns and so on, are in the trousers. So it's all of those, but we've got to alchemize that and not try and get out of it. I think this is where I've got a video on my YouTube account talking about where I think Mount Meru is actually in Africa. and not in the North Pole like everybody in Flat Earth keeps saying. Because in the chakra system, the purple one is outside of your body. It's actually above your head. And I think that they're always trying to misdirect us. And to get out of your head, I mean, that's like getting shit-faced, right? Get out of your head is what they want you to do, rather than go to the heart. Well, the heart is at the center. And Mount Meru, if you go on Google Earth, you will find it right on the equator, right next to Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. There's a 4,000-meter high mountain, black, just like it's described in stories. There's a Mount Meru there. There's a Meru people, and they have an ancient story that is interesting to read. So if you're on YouTube, go and check out my video on Mount Meru. I think it's in the middle. I may be wrong, but everything else is pointing me to go to the center. The center is where the heart is, and the center of our Earth is the equator or equal Taurus equator. And that would be the point between, with your body, that would be around about your chest. And so I'm just offering that to people as food for thought, because we need to be thinking, and we don't want to get out of our heads. We want to stay on the earth, in the earth, be in the world, but not of it.
Oh,
so
thank you for that, Dave. That's very interesting.
I'd like to leave that in there and say, it's been a fascinating.
Can I just ask you one thing? Just one thing before we end on this video. Because we have been going for an hour and 45 minutes.
Wow.
One of your videos, when you were out at the churches, you said it's almost as if we blink our eyes and it's all happened.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that? I think you were with Sven.
Yes.
What did you mean by that? Because I've thought that. I thought maybe this... I mean, I realise now, Marie Wheatley told me that corn circles were made by men. Whereas I thought that's how it happened. You could just blink because they're in a different dimension. It's a blink for us, and it could be 10 years for them.
Okay.
Is that what you meant?
Came to me, I think when I was doing I did a couple of tours with Sven on his channel, Sven P, where we went around Bournemouth, I think, on that occasion. And I was just, I've been looking at these mud-flooded buildings and unbelievable architecture for 4 or 5 years now. And it just struck me that, wow, there's so much that has emerged in the 1860, 70, particularly 1880, 1890 period, right? And it's so much of our stuff. But I'd also come up with this phrase cladding, that I realized that a lot of these buildings are clad buildings. After we stayed in that stately home a few years ago, I got into the behind the building.
Yeah, the Victorians did it. The rotten Victorians.
And so it's put down as the Victorians did it, but there is so much across the earth of this kind of cladding, of a sandstone cladding. It's like, how did they possibly do that, given the population, given the manpower, given the tools and so on? How did they do?
I think they're lying. I think that say we had cowboys and Indians, that was probably the 15th or 16th century, not the 80th. They just lied about time so much. Maybe these things happened, but not in the times that they said. And I mean, this sort of, I put it like the League of Gentlemen, that happened before the Victorians. Maybe it was between Elizabeth I and the Victorians. And they seem far more advanced than we were.
Well, just to the point that you were asking me about the blinking, is that I came to this theory, given how I've looked at hundreds of buildings, and I know there are probably millions of buildings that are similar, grand, big buildings. They've got this sort of 6-inch sandstone cladding on them, and which may be poured concrete, but nonetheless, beneath those buildings sits other buildings. There is this red brick building underneath it. So basically, what I thought was that it was like a Disneyland, where they've closed the Disneyland for a week, and then they've done a little set change, and then you come back, and whatever, like Cowboy Land has now become Victoria Land, you see. And so that there is either a technology or a process by which there was no one here for a while. It was clad, and then I don't want to sort of belabor the answer, but then I started looking at some buildings where I think they've clad this building, and then a smaller mud flood occurred to this building, and then they had to create a secondary entrance into this building on a first or second floor above, because it seems to me evident that the original cladding and then the later bridging to get into the building were not done by the same people. So I have this theory that there was a cladding put on during a switchover period, and then we came back, or people were allowed back, or repopulated the place. But it could be, and it's, this is why I sort of wonder if there was a kind of Mandela effect possibility, where, given that we live in an electromagnetic world, it is possible to switch something and actually just almost hit a button, and then these buildings are just in the same way as a computer programmer could do today, where he could go into a scene and then just say, okay, render, instead of the bricks being red, render me on top of that something different. And I mean, obviously I can't prove this, but it was just an idea. So I'm glad you brought it up. I haven't thought about it for a while.
Do you know what? It's a bit like, do you remember, it wasn't Voyage to the Bottom, Time Tunnel. They did that. So when he went through the Time Tunnel, it was in the 60s that was, he went off and saved the world, and it could have taken him 6 months, but all they did was blink. And so he went in a blink and he came back.
Yeah.
And that was the 1960s, they were telling us that.
Well, as I say, it's definitely an electromagnetic world, in my view, that definitely, and so in that case, it is possible with a click of a finger to alter things, and to maybe have things just, as a computer programmer would do.
We don't even know what this is here. We still don't know who we are and where we are and what we're doing here.
We are love. And we come from, I really feel that. I think that we are love. Yes, we might be being tricked by some demiurge or some other thing. There might be something, there's probably something nefarious going on. I wouldn't argue against that. But I think we are love, and that the purpose for all of this deception, and if you think about the extent of the globe lie in the last 2 years of Corona and so on, all of this deception is being done for a very important reason, and it wouldn't be just for nothing that they would have made up all of this bullshit about living on the underside of a globe and so on. So for me, it's the deception. Why would I lie to a partner? Well, because
I think they've done it a certain way, because I was thinking, like my kids, they got so bored of just looking at the back of the teacher. They weren't very enthralled and were probably throwing things around. So lots of boys aren't learning at school. They learn it on the telly. That's where people are getting educated, is off the telly.
Well, that's funny enough. I was thinking about, that English TV show, The Bill. It's a police show. If someone's from out of the country, they won't know. But I was thinking about that today, and that actually that TV show is probably also designed to teach the policemen how to be. Policemen whose job is to be a policeman watch that because it's one of their own. They watch that, and from that, they get ideation about how to police. I promise you, I believe it's that clever, that they actually train policemen by using their entertainment time of watching the TV.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that impressed you, Karen. Anyway,
yeah, well, because it just, for me, I've been saying that for a while. It's almost as if we've blinked. Is it a blink and it's all there?
Yeah, I mean, I think...
we're still on the journey all together, aren't we? You're there, Mickey's there, Amy's there. We're all still here, but things have quite drastically changed.
I've got to offer people two things. Well, one is there's the University of Cape Town is meant to be built. It currently has 20,000 students. It's a phenomenal old world building, and it was built at a time when the whole of Cape Town had fewer than 50,000 residents, and it's just a magnificently large building. But there was one thing I wanted to mention that I'd overlooked mentioning, is that obviously there's this encroaching computerization or AI of our world, where they've got programs that can watch this and watch that. But you may have come across a robot called Sophia.
Yeah.
Sophia is actually a woman wearing a rubber mask, and I just wanted to throw that bombshell in there, because I did a video on it, but unfortunately I didn't record my audio. But I've done the research on it, and I'm absolutely certain that these AI, these robots that they're trying to convince people, obviously it's another part of an important part of the deception that's going on. But Sophia the robot is actually a woman, and she's just wearing a rubber mask. And there's more and more of them. One came into the UK Parliament the other day, and they stand there deadpan, and they've got this rubber mask on. It's called Flubber, and the inventor of Flubber used to work for Disney, and he's now very famous because it's his robot. Sophia is his robot, and his robot is modeled on his wife. And his wife and the robot and him are never in the same picture. It's because his wife is Sophia the robot.
Ah.
I just want you to know that.
So there's no such things as robots then?
No, there's no. The only robots they've got are very basic
machine ones for cars and things like that.
They've got like the four-legged one. There's a company called Boston Dynamics. They're at the leading edge of robot design, and I think even they're using CGI to get people to believe they got this two-legged robot that can do things that it can't. But basically, robots are as simple as they've got a four-legged thing that can move around, but normally it's got to be remotely controlled. Otherwise, you give it a preset thing. It can't think for itself. Robots are not real, and I just wanted to, those people who've listened this long through have gotten a little insight into it. But I can assure you, I've done the research on this, and I'm convinced that I can show you how they are doing the trick. It's a little bit like they do with the International Space Station, where they sometimes use blue screen, they sometimes use harnesses, they sometimes use a real thing doing something real. So in the case of Sophia the robot, they do have an automaton robot that can kind of move very basically, like walk very, very basically, and that would move its lips very, very simply. But when you see on the TV this woman Sophia, or this robot Sophia, moving her eyes and sort of looking around and having a lot of facial expression and all that sort of stuff, that's a real human being sitting under a mask that was made by Disney, that was made essentially by a Disney employee. And
wow.
And so I can tear that whole robot thing apart. I've just been a bit too busy to kind of make go back and make the video, because as I said, I recorded it trying to do screen caps at the same time using this app. And I didn't actually record any of my audio, so I haven't actually put it out, and I'd like to do a better job of it. But it's good just to at least throw it down there and get people
Thanks
thinking.
for that, Dave.
Yeah, just get them thinking about it, because once you start to pick it apart, you go, shit, yeah. I'll give you something else to think about with that, Karen, is that whenever you see the one who looks like, wow, that's an impressive robot, you'll notice that it's that robot they built with quite a big chest, quite a big sort of bust, and you ask yourself, why would they do that? Why would they necessarily need to form it? Well, that's because that's where the real human being is tucking her arms into her chest, because they got robot arms hanging off a brace on her shoulders.
So it's a NASA job again.
So it looks like, it looks like, wow, she's got like robot arms and they can move very simply and so on. So it kind of, it makes you believe that you're seeing a robot, but it's actually what she's done is she's tucking her arms into her chest in order to hide them, while they hang a sort of a collar or a yoke over her back with these two arms, robot arms, that she's probably controlling with a little remote control in her hand. So, I'm just giving you some clues to go and look at this for yourself.
Thank you. I will. I'll go.
I'll
look at your video.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't made I'll try and get it once my ban is over. Maybe I'll get chance between now and then the 2-week ban being over to remake the video, and then I'll put it up. I could put it up on my other channel, which is the Trinity's. But as I say, I haven't had the heart to go back and remake it. I'll be honest, when you're getting 100 views, it's like, where's this information actually going? Is it, am I making it?
Shadow banned by YouTube. They love doing it.
So, what's the kind of, it's like how much energy, and of course, losing my original channel, how much energy has been bit you put in.
Happens
and,
to
and
us
what
all,
difference it
Dave.
made.
Unscrambled is part 2 and Sun and Moon Now is part 2, and I had a lot more subscribers on both the channels before.
Yeah. And
But then I
the
could
thing
get
with
one of my videos on Unscrambled had something like 500 and something thousand views. So, I've just put something. So if you were gonna, if they say you're gonna be viral, that was a viral video, but they've deleted all that.
Yeah, I see. And actually, I mean, and I'm just going to throw it out there, one of my sort of frustrations with the truth community is that they latch on to a thing, like the 8 inches per mile squared. I've been arguing for years now that even with Jeranism and Bob from Globebusters, guys, you can't calculate this on a flat piece of paper.
Yeah, I watched that one of your videos because you're always on top.
Yeah, you're always on top, and you get to zero. You get to, with a flat line piece of paper, you get to zero everything. You don't have to worry about that. You just come up the side of a ball, and you've got to go down the. I say to people that a ball has got exactly the same dimensions. It's a perfect sphere, has the same dimensions, no matter the size of the ball. So you can take a tennis ball, or a volleyball, whatever, and you can measure that and say, so I'm going to travel from the North to the South Pole, which is a height drop of 8 units. And the distance over the skin of that is going to be 12 units, which means on average, I'm going to go 12 and 8. I'm going to go 12 across and 8 down. In other words, 1,200 meters over the skin would mean 800 meters of drop. So if you lived on a globe, then it would be so incredibly obvious. This 8 inches per mile squared it gives people lots of latitude for going, maybe it's there, it's not there, and so on. But as I say to people, like, why a lot of people don't buy the 8 inches per mile squared and won't go into flat earth is because they go, well, so if you say that it's 10 miles from here to there, and the first mile is 8 inches, but the last mile is 60 feet or whatever it is, or 50 inches or 500 inches, I forget now. If you say that, but then you take a pontoon at 1 mile intervals, or you take a ship at 1 mile intervals, you put 10 ships next, or in a row, and you ask each of those captains to use our formula and say how much curvature, each one of them would say 8 inches. Each one would say there's only 8 inches ahead of me. And that would be right according to our formula. But so that's why the formula doesn't make sense, and it doesn't. A lot of people who think about it in mathematical go say, no, that's not right. That can't be right. I say that the curvature on a globe would be so insane. No matter how big the globe is, it would be so insane in every direction that it would be impossible to ignore. It would be like living on a cliff almost. So that's the one thing. And of course, the Mount Meru
I think
thing,
we'd see
where
everything going differently, wouldn't it? If we were revolving, how we saw the sun and everything would be different.
All of that. But I can't get flat earthers to stop in their tracks and go, okay, let me think for myself now, because
most of them are shills and trolls.
Trust me, I've told 100,000 people, thousands of people in the street, 8 inches per mile squared. So I'm not someone who's gone, I didn't buy that too. I bought it too, but that was what we were handed when we found flat Earth. We were like,
and a lot of people stick to it, and they think they know, don't they? Think they know everything, and actually they've just got another set of not correct answers.
Just like the Protestants, they were like, oh, we don't like Catholicism. Right, yes, Protestantism. Great, that's perfect for me then. No, that's just
changed, I'm not saying I've changed my mind for what I believe in, what we live on, but over the years I've changed my mind to things because of the information that you've realised or comes in.
Well, the same is true with Mount Meru. I'm trying to get people to wake up to the possibility that actually we've never seen a picture of this Mount Meru in the North Pole. We've never even, I don't even know if we traveled beyond 70
unless
or 80
it's on that
degrees.
bit behind Greenland, because Greenland's only the size of England, but behind it.
But it's all smoke and mirrors. No plane has ever flown over there. They go, look.
Yes, that's true. We don't know what it's like there.
Can you see that black thing down there? That's Mount Meru. And as I say to people, if it was a magnet, then our compasses in England would be much more powerfully.
Well, the Union Jack fits on nearly everything, Dave. That might show you the shape we are, because nearly everybody's got a flag which links into the Union Jack. I mean, Jamaica have got a crisscross, and they live on the crisscross of that Union Jack. And also, Union Jack means to have a Union Jack, you've got to be on a warship. So what does that tell you? It's a Union
Yeah.
flag. Do you know? Do you know
Yeah.
it is the Union flag? I suppose it maybe to some
Yeah.
people they're going to say, but we usually say Union Jack.
Well, the Union flag, or the South African flag I grew up with as a child had the Union. It had three elements of the Union Jack in it.
Mm.
So yeah, but if you take a table map or a wall map that we're given, and you lay the Union Jack over it, the center of that will be near Mount Kilimanjaro, near Mount Meru. So I'm just throwing that back out there because I want people to think for themselves and go, you know what, the only place that you can find Mount Meru, there is a peak Meru somewhere, but there's only one Mount Meru in India, but there's only one Mount Meru in the world, and that happens to be in Africa, and it happens to be right on the equator, well, 2 degrees off the equator, something like that. So, it's like, wow, that's the center of the known world. Africa, we are all told we come from, that story about Africa and everything being, originating in there and so
Yeah.
on and so forth. So it's like, there's a lot of clues there. But if you want to go to the North Pole, by all means do that. However, you cannot actually travel there because of the conditions being so insane. If our Creator wanted us to be able to travel to a spiritual center, then it would be made amenable for all people across all ages, not to have to wait for a kind of, modernity and snowmobiles and some kind of, technology, and you can't even eat food there because there's no food to be had out there, and blah, 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 blah. Whereas, the most lush place where there's the most food and animals and blah, blah, blah is in the Serengeti, which is near Mount Meru. So I'm just trying to kind of spark people because, a lot of what we've been telling people is stuff that we were given by the same system. It's like, so you think that they managed to like hoax us with the Bible and all these sorts of things, but somehow just couldn't stop us from learning about Mount Meru in the North Pole, and all of these other things, So yeah, Sophia's a hoax, and Mount Meru may well be in the North Pole, may well be a misdirection, and that actually the truth is right in front of us. The truth is in plain sight. You just need to go onto Google Earth and type in Mount Meru, and you will see the most incredible, like a stratovolcano, black, beautiful. It almost looks like it looks like a female, like genital parts actually, but it's 4,000. It's 4,000 meters high, and so yeah, that's a feminine kind of.
Hang on a second. Hang on, Dave. Hang on. Yeah, there you go, Mount Meru. It's strange. It's called Mount Meru, isn't it?
Well, it's not. I mean, there's a whole Meru people, and there's 1 million people today call themselves the Meru people. But their old culture runs back. It's almost like the Old Testament was written by those people and taken up to Israel or to the Middle East. But the people in Israel, the Middle East, will tell you that no, they took that story down to the Mount Meru people. But that's they could be, the origin story of mankind could be from there for real. And so I find it really fascinating that there is all of this. And of course, if we believe that there were the old no forest on flat Earth, and that our mountains were once trees. Some of our mountains were once trees. And Kilimanjaro happens to be the tallest freestanding mountain on Earth. And it's
even bigger than Everest?
No, it's the tallest freestanding.
Everest is on top of another mountain range, isn't it? Yeah,
it's within a range, whereas Kilimanjaro stands on its own. And when I looked at this on Google Earth, it seemed to me as if the tree had once stood, it fell towards, what's that island called that Santos has been talking about? Zanzibar. So if you go to Zanzibar, you can see a range of mountains that runs from Kilimanjaro to Zanzibar. And I estimated, this is years ago, I estimated that this is about 140 kilometers to Zanzibar from Kilimanjaro. So the tree fell, and that's what you see, this range of mountains that runs towards Zanzibar. And if that's true, that it was about 140 kilometers high, it would have been touching the sky. Now, our story says that there was a mother tree that touched the sky, that could touch the dome. And so it may be, because I think that there are trees on all of the continents that were major trees. And like in Australia, they got that rock called Uhuru. Yeah. Have you heard of it? It was called Ayers Rock or Red Rock.
Yeah.
Well, the top peak on Kilimanjaro is called Uluru. Uhuru. Always get them mixed up. But they have almost the same name. It's like, how did ancient people call their rock by the same name? Pretty much.
I thought one day, Dave, it was almost as if the trees had fallen over and the roots were sticking up in Antarctica. 2 trees, that's where maybe the poles are, and then as they've fallen down, we're living on the bark of the trees, and that's what we live on.
Have you been listening to my videos?
That's what I thought.
You open a whole can of worms here, man. I don't have time, but I really this is what I believe actually is that we do live on a tree that was felled. But if you think about a magnet, right, a bar magnet has a spray coming out of the top and a spray coming out of the bottom. Yeah, and each of those sort of bend round and touch each other. You get me? Now this bar magnet, if you think about putting the bar magnet onto a flat table, onto a table in your house, yeah, underneath the table you would have a spray of magnetic fiber, and on the top you would have a spray, and if you had to lay your body down, and then the hair at the top of your head is the spray of the North Pole, and the hair between your legs is the spray of the South Pole, yeah. And then if you bring those back around to your belly button, yeah, now you've created the figure 8. Yeah. Now your belly button would be what I would be considered to be Mount Meru, and that's why I think that the belly button is, say, the Africa, and then they're getting everybody to go to the North Pole, which is the head. Like I said to you earlier, you don't want to spend all your time in the attic. Well, they're wanting people to leave the attic and get up into the North Pole, which I don't think is necessary on this journey. I think we're meant to be getting to the heart, which is near the belly button, which is near the center. And so I kind of totally agree with you. I think that one of the misconceptions is that the tree of life is standing upright. No, it's fallen over.
Yeah, it's a flat tree, and we kind of see that on aerial photographs, high altitude photographs with waters and things. They look like trees in the land anyway, just the water.
The way that the riverbeds form,
yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But if you wanted to make a table from a tree, you wouldn't cut it while it was standing up. You would fell it, and then you would cut it in lengths, planks, and that's what I think we live on, is like a felled tree with a North Pole and a South Pole. The North Pole is the branches, is the canopy with all the leaves. The South Pole is where the roots are.
And the roots have uprooted, so the trees are lying down and the roots are up in the air.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like and the way I started cutting, I used to cut the orange through, or an apple through the equator, and say, this is what we live on. We live where the seeds are. Now I cut it the other way. I say, if you cut it from the stem down, top to bottom, and you let it fall open, then that's where we live. In that center line, where the seeds are, is where our continents are, in the center of the apple. But you've got to cut it, not that you've got to cut it, but my preferred model now is to cut it top to bottom. And then imagine that I'm lying on my back, because as I say to people, what is your natural position? Your natural position is to be lying down, actually. You need musculature. It takes you a year after you've been born to build up the musculature to stand up against the natural downward attractive forces of this plate. So actually your natural position is lying, and your higher self is actually lying in state. And I think that we are lying on, God is, if you like, or the creator or whatever, Mother Nature is lying flat, and we are walking in or on the body of a sleeping giant, a lying down giant, a tree, whatever. And it has a North Pole. And to take that, to take the orange or apple analogy a little step further, is that if you had to lie on your back and watch the sky, or the night sky, the stars and everything roll around you from east to west, roll past you, that would be as though you were lying inside the orange where the pips are, and the skin was loose, and it was able to kind of roll above you and show you this pith going past you, which we call stars and all of that sort of stuff. bombshell.
Hmm.
How about that?
Yeah, because we're
It takes
supposed to
you a while
live in
to
a
think about it.
toroidal field, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah, it's all a torus. That's why you have a clitoris and an equatorus, and a thorax or a torso.
You know, you said obviously because you know in this picture it looks like it's been a volcano and it's erupted, but behind it the rock is much much higher.
Yes, there's like a ridge around it. Hey, well, that's the part that I thought was like the hood. And I know I'm not trying to be sexual, but I was like, wow, that's like a feminine hood. Like around a woman's clitoris. I'm not trying. I'm just trying to lay it out there. And it's above the navel. It's just below the navel as well. So, yeah, to me, there's something unique and special about that place, and no one wants to talk about it.
Isn't that strange? We're all looking for Mount Meru, and it's in Tanzania anyway.
Say again?
I said we're all looking for Mount Meru, and there it is in Tanzania anyway.
Exactly. So I want to arrange a tour to go there. I just need some backers to help me with the finances. But I want to arrange a tour to go there and take people to that. I want to call it Flat Earth Tours with Trinity. And because I truly think that it's accessible to us. It actually is accessible, but because ego is involved, and the biggest, the guys, as I said, the guys who got this information about flat Earth and the North Pole and blah blah blah, blah, they got this first. Their ego is so attached to holding that story afloat that they cannot hear me speak it when I say, no, look here, there is a Mount Meru, and it's impressive. It's 4,000. It's taller than anything in the UK. It's a really tall mountain. All by itself. So 4 kilometers height, and and it's black, and it's and it's got this hole, and it's a caldera. It's an old stratovolcano. It's got a lot to it, and the Meru people around, they have this.
Oh yes,
story.
I see what you mean.
and
I see what you mean about the women's bits now.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not really at all. But I'm, and then one of the nearby mountains, also impressive, is called Mountain of the Gods. And now I know that could be, anyone could name it Mountain of the Gods and so on and so forth. But there's enough there for me to go, shit.
Do you know one thing I think as well, Dave? Before, like maybe when you're saying with this transition with the cladding, we've been totally mined to death. It stopped in the 1900s. I know there's still mines here, but the main mining stopped in the 1900s. They could have caused a lot of the problems. They could have caused earthquakes. And, I've done stuff with Christian about, now we call it fracking, but it used to be called leaching. Same thing. They just changed its name. So we've been heavily mined well before we were born. And how does that fit into their world? Because we would have only had horses and carts.
Well, I do wonder with the fracking, and it could apply also to the mining, whether they're not trying to damage it. Something is not trying to damage, in the same way it's trying to damage your body with toxins and environmental toxins. It's trying to do that to the macrocosm body as well, the body of God, the body of the creation. So that the fracking is almost like putting in a jab into your arm. It's kind of like putting a bit of toxin into the system, a little bit of stress. Which is causing. Don't forget that
even when they're doing this, there are a lot of what we live on is under our feet. Towns and cities are under there anyway. So if you start having earthquakes, no wonder things fall and crack and everything because there's buildings underneath.
Yeah, and we know that diamonds are there's so many diamonds. There's so much diamond on Earth that they don't need to mine the way they do and how much they do and so on. And South Africa,
I think they're getting the gold from. Well, Christian believes that. It's from dead people. It's in our hearts. So this is why they may be moving us around all the time. So that when they say they found a mine with gold in it, what they've done is they're just digging up some burial grounds, ancient ones. And then Christian reckon the more, like you've got 9 carat, 12, whatever it is, 18 carat and all that. The higher the carat, the older the body it came from.
Well, I like that, but I prefer my theory, which is that it is from the trees. You see, trees have sap, and they have, tree has its own lifeblood in it. So if we had these ancient trees, then there would be veins of the trees that when there was the crystallizing of the trees, because the trees were, I don't think, when we talk about forests on flat Earth, I don't believe that these mountains that we see today were trees made of rock. They were trees made
silicon.
Okay, but they were able to, they were frozen in a way that Lot's wife was frozen, turned into salt in the Bible story. They were when that transition happened, then various materials or fluids within the tree turned to various stones that we know today, and materials like gold and so on. So that, because when you look at, say, the South African gold mines, which are quite, some of the deepest in the world, and they, the way that they branch off they're down at like over a mile, maybe 2 miles deep, even maybe a little deeper. They branch off, so they go down generally in one tunnel down, and then they'll go off in sections, almost like a root of a tree would be, so that's why I kind of prefer that. But it's an interesting one. I wouldn't discount it and say, it's just because they find these deposits in such large amounts that, yeah, you could say that
so if Mount Meru was a tree, it does look like it's been it looks like something's poured out of it. What would that have been, as it's black now then, if it's not volcanic?
Well, it's considered to be by the mainstream a stratovolcano. So there must be, and it does look like melted hay. So it must be like a whole lot of melting occurred to it from the top down, or melting came, magma or some heat came from the underneath and forced its way up.
Or is that a big slag heap?
Yeah, it could be. And they could have been mining the hell out of it. But it's Mount Meru, my sister. It's Mount Meru. Show me Mount Meru anywhere else. Show me a picture of Mount Meru that's in the North Pole. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And so what everybody in flat Earth is doing is running around, scurrying around like headless chickens, looking for something, once again, that doesn't actually, there's no evidence of it other than, there's a book, an ancient book was found. Well, they found a Nag Hammadi text. They found, all these tablets and so on, which could all be like hoaxes designed to kind of mislead us anyway. So why not what was it called, the Trip to Iron Mountain or something, the book that people reference as proof that there's a Mount Meru in the North Pole. I don't see it.
And also we've petrified as well, haven't we, somewhere along the line?
Petrification, yes. Well, that's what I think happened to the trees, is they were petrified, and so
and turned into rock.
Frightening is, when you get frightened, actually it's a change of your vibration, so, and that's when petrified. So I think things changed, the vibration changed, and then all of a sudden these trees were no longer flexible, and they crumbled, and they fell. And in the case of Kilimanjaro, which was this big tree right by the Mount Meru, it fell and became the mountain range that leads to Zanzibar. And why I referenced Santos earlier was because his cohort, I don't know if you know, there's been a whole business about his syncretism society, but he was involved with another guy called Daniel, is it? And Daniel has been spending time in Zanzibar over the last few months. So I started to ponder whether they hadn't also kind of realized that there's something important there. So I'll just throw that in.
Yeah, although thank you for that. Well, I've thought about some of these things myself.
Yeah, well, yeah, but he was saying that, we're going to set up in Zanzibar, we're going to set up, ourselves, and I thought, so it's like, oh, that's a little convenient.
And even though now it looks a bit sort of, well, it's not really desert, but it's barren, doesn't mean it was like that, it's just like it now.
Where?
Mount Meru and that, it's quite, it's...
Well, the mountain itself maybe, but actually if you zoom back out, the whole of that area is protected.
Well, I suppose one here, yeah, it's greenery. Here we go. We've got one over here.
Super forest. There is so much green there, and I've been talking about the heart and the heart being green chakra, and center and all that sort of thing. We'll contrast that with what we believe the North Pole to be, which is cold, white, and white may be black, but it's anything but green. So unless I can be shown otherwise, I think some people say, oh no, it could be really warm there, and I say, well no, but think about it. If you had if you had heating in your house and you put the heater right in the center of your lounge, then the warmest place would be the center of your lounge. The coldest place would be the walls on the outside. Well, in our Earth, we have, I believe, the sun in the center of our Earth, around the equator, with some tropical variations. But the coldest parts, logically, are going to be the furthest away, which is what we would currently call the North and South Pole. So my logic dictates that yes, the warmest place, the most habitable place, is within the tropics, and obviously the equator is going to be super hot because that's right near the furnace in the middle of your lounge. So it's all just playing logic, and really trying to zoom out of all the stories and the theater and the soap opera of all of this stuff, and just try and think for myself. And
I've enjoyed that. Thank you, Dave. Learned a few more things today.
Well, I've enjoyed it too, Karen. I really appreciate your time. Andrea's enjoyed it, and she's enjoyed giving her thoughts. And of course, both of us are available for coaching, stroke mentoring, with people. So again, if you want to check us out on the Shoreline on Facebook or LoveTruthSovereignty.com.
Yeah, I'll leave a copy to the link of your Facebook channel, the page in the description.
Yeah, can I send you a link to my website as well?
Of course, yeah, send me that.
I'll do that now. Well,
Yeah, do you want to? Well, should we just obviously we're going, but should we just say goodbye on air and then we'll just say goodbye off air?
Okay.
Andrea, thank you so much for being here too and having the chat. It was great. And Dave, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And just sending my love out to everyone, and wherever they're at on their journey. We're
best wishes for
we're sending our wishes.
The new coming year, 2023.
Yes, another year over. They're going quite quick nowadays, aren't they?
All right.
Yes.
Good night.
Thanks very much. And we'll just say goodbye off air. But anyway, for the on air, thanks very much.